Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea officially confirms its minimum wage for next year, an increase of 5.1% from this year's. The Minimum Wage Commission rejected complaints that would be too much for small business. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi pledges that the next round of relief payments for small business will be paid out quickly starting this month. They'll also be looking into debt relief and tax deferrals. And President Moon Jae-in attends the launch of a committee that will lead South Korea toward its goal of becoming the world's 5th largest vaccine producer by the year 2025. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The minimum hourly wage in South Korea next year has officially been set at 9,161 per hour. That's around $8. Compared to this year, it's an increase of more than 5%, but it's still short of the Moon administration's goal of 10,000 won an hour. Bae Eun-ji reports.
Starting January 1st next year, South Korean workers will be paid at least 9,160 Korean won, or around $8 per hour. This is up 5.1% from this year's hourly minimum wage. The changes mean someone working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with no overtime would earn around $320 a week. The Labor Ministry officially announced the change on Thursday, saying that it will be applied equally across all industries. The Minimum Wage Commission, which is composed of representatives from labor, business, and the general public, had earlier set the rate on July 12th. Thursday's announcement comes after a legally mandated period of review, in which 3 business groups, including the Korea Enterprises Federation, filed objections, saying that an increase of more than 5% in minimum wage is impossible for small businesses to handle. But the ministry rejected the complaints and upheld the commission's decision without making any changes. The minimum wage negotiations held last month were centered on the economic downfall from the pandemic, with labor representatives demanding an increase and business representatives calling for a freeze in the minimum wage, before reaching a final decision. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea's finance minister has pledged to disperse the latest round of pandemic relief funds for small business quickly this month and next. He also said the government will be looking at other measures to help small businesses like debt relief and tax deferrals. Min Soo-kyun reports.
South Korea's finance minister Hong Nam-gi stressed the need to minimize the pandemic-driven downturn and quickly support those hit hard by the pandemic to foster economic recovery. During an emergency economic meeting on Thursday, Hong said that the country's economic recovery appears to have ground to a halt amid the 4th wave of COVID-19. In response, he vowed to swiftly use the second supplementary budget of this year, as well as to ramp up antivirus measures during August and September. Of the roughly $30 billion extra budget, Hong said 90% of the relief funds will be rolled out by the end of next month. The government is looking into additional measures to support small businesses, such as a deferral of tax payments and social insurance premiums in the second half of the year. It also plans to review whether or not to extend debt maturity and hold off interest payments set to expire at the end of September. Further details are expected to be announced in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, the minister said that the latest wave was somewhat different from the 3rd outbreak. Hong said that due to the country's speedy vaccination drive and antivirus efforts, credit card payments are showing positive signs with an increase in online sales, hinting that the economy will not suffer as much. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
One of Seoul's most famous attractions for tourists, the shopping district of Myeong-dong, is a ghost town these days because of the pandemic. Shops have closed and close to half the buildings there are vacant. But some experts say this could be a chance for owners to renovate and for the neighborhood to reinvent itself. Seo In-kyung reports.
The COVID-19 outbreak has taken its toll on Korea's tourism and shopping industries. And one of the worst hit areas is the central shopping district of Myeong-dong.
I find Myeong-dong much quieter. The number of people in the streets has definitely decreased a lot.
I come like once in a week or maybe like twice in a month, whatever, depending on whatever I want. So I think now it's less crowded compared to before Corona.
The lack of visitors means many shops are now empty. Myeong-dong is one of the largest commercial districts in Seoul and a shopping mecca for foreign tourists. But amid the pandemic, more than 4 out of 10 small-sized commercial buildings have become vacant. According to the Korea Real Estate Board, the vacancy rate of small-sized commercial buildings in Myeong-dong hit around 43% in the second quarter this year. And the higher vacancy rate has led to cheaper leases. The lease cost index of small buildings in Myeong-dong has fallen from 117 in the fourth quarter of 2019 to below 90 by the second quarter of this year. Building owners usually do not lower the lease fee even if it is vacant due to the concerns about a drop in the value of the building. But the long period of vacancies has started to force owners to reduce their rent. On the surface, it appears that Myeong-dong is losing its competitiveness. However, experts say that the high vacancy rate could be an opportunity for the shopping mecca to reinvest itself for local shoppers.
About 80% of visitors in Myeong-dong were overseas tourists. Since cosmetic products were the #1 choice among foreign visitors, most of commercial buildings here were occupied by cosmetic shops, which limited the choice for customers. However, as many of buildings became empty and their rents fell, small merchants who wished to do business in Myeong-dong but couldn't due to high rent have now moved in.
The expert added that the higher vacancy rates also provide chance for building owners to repair and renovate the mostly 50-year-old buildings. 서은경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, good afternoon. Thank you for coming on today.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, stocks on Wall Street closed lower overnight for the most part. Earnings have been beating expectations for the second quarter, but hiring in the U.S. did not meet expectations, and that's causing concern about the economy. What's the story in the global markets?
U.S. stocks mostly fell Wednesday on concerns that the pandemic recovery might be faltering as cases related to the Delta variant of the pandemic surge. And new economic data showed that the private sector added fewer jobs than economists expected in July. According to a survey, private sector added 330,000 jobs in July, which is almost half of the number that were previously expected. Also, slowdown in the rate of vaccination is prompting some concerns that the authorities may reimpose restrictions on social activity and travel. Dow Jones declined by 0.9% and SP 500 also declined by 0.5% yesterday. But Nasdaq gained by 0.1% yesterday amid strong earnings report of high-tech companies. Eurozone's market advanced over 0.2% as manufacturing and service industry expand in a survey.
Well, a somewhat similar story here in Korea today. Stocks were mixed. The main index, the Kospi, was lower, but a decent gain on the Kosdaq. Some big names like SK Bioscience had a good run, but closed down. Tell us about the domestic market.
Today, there were opposite movements between Kospi and Kosdaq in domestic market. From morning session, Kospi market switched between positive and negative return many times, but ended with negative 0.1% return today. Foreigners and institutional investors' buy was not enough to beat individuals' huge sales to cash in recent profit. But foreign investors' appetite for domestic chip manufacturer was strong, even with declining market. On the other hand, Kosdaq's 1.1% rise was driven by foreign investors' 240 billion won purchase today. That was a relatively large purchase considering the size of the Kosdaq market. It is expected that foreign investors will be active in Kosdaq market for a while.
Now, zooming out a bit, Professor, last month, Korea's foreign exchange reserves rose by around $4.6 billion. So now FX reserves are at another new high. In part, that's because the dollar's gotten a little weaker. But tell us about that and what it means for Korea.
According to Bank of Korea, South Korea's foreign reserve rose to an all-time high in July as a weaker U.S. dollar raised the value of non-dollar assets, like in Japanese yen and euro. The nation's foreign reserve came to 458.7 billion U.S. dollars as of end of July, up 4.6 billion U.S. dollars from the previous month. Foreign reserve consists of securities and deposits denominated in foreign currencies, IMF reserve positions, and special drawing rights and gold bullion. The Bank of Korea said weaker U.S. dollar boosted dollar conservation value of non-dollar assets in the foreign reserve last month. Foreign securities decreased by 4.4 billion U.S. dollars, but foreign securities deposits rose 8.9 billion U.S. dollars. The gap between the two parts was the net increase of the Korean foreign reserve. So South Korea was the world's 8th largest holder of foreign reserve as of July.
And on the inflation front, consumer prices rose last month in Korea by 2.6% from a year earlier, and that's the biggest increase so far this year. And now the Chuseok holiday is next month, and that's when people typically buy a lot of food. But with another round of relief payments before then, some are concerned this could raise prices further. What do you make of that idea, Professor?
Domestic inflation got stronger momentum in July. As you said, July's inflation was 2.6% on year, which is the highest this year. So over 2% yearly inflation has continued over 4 straight months from April. That means against the government's previous expectation, there is higher possibility that current inflation stays longer than expected. Particularly grocery prices continue to climb, making the lives of ordinary citizens even more difficult amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Particularly, the price of the egg surged to a 4-year high of 57%. So President Moon had to order the government to interfere to stabilize egg price. Given these inflation circumstances, government will implement fiscal stimulus by providing emergency cash out program from next month. This 35 trillion won or 30 billion US dollar stimulus package is another force to drive up inflation in the second half of this year. But I have to say that this is a necessary policy because supporting the hardest hit by COVID has the higher priority than stabilizing inflation.
Yeah, we'll have to see to what degree that stimulates grocery prices. We'll have to follow up on that later, Professor. And finally, the Bank of Korea has, of course, been giving pretty clear signs that it's going to raise rates sooner or later. But at the same time, the spread of the coronavirus adds some uncertainty to that situation. What do you think about the timing of the BOK's move on rates?
Both of over 2% inflation and financial imbalance give more risk to Korean economy these days. To stabilize these uncertainties, it is highly expected that Bank of Korea will raise key interest rate twice until the first half of next year. Then Bank of Korea's key interest rate will become 1% from 0.5% of today. But the problem is higher interest rate slows down economic recovery. So if Delta variant spreads gets stronger, government and the ruling party would disagree when Bank of Korea actually about to raise the interest rate sometime this year's fall. And the fact that presidential election comes in next March is another factor to make difficult Bank of Korea to raise the interest rate.
Right. Both interesting points, Professor. We'll have to leave it there for today, though. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
South Korea aims to become the world's 5th largest vaccine producer by the year 2025. And President Moon Jae-in affirmed that goal on Thursday, chairing the inaugural meeting of the preparatory committee. He also pledged to designate vaccine development as one of the nation's strategic technology areas.
앞으로 5년간 2조 2천억 원을 투입할 계획입니다. 연구개발과 시설 투자에 대한 세제 지원을 대폭 확대하고 필수 소재, 부품, 장비의 생산과 기술을 자급화해 국내 기업들이 생산 역량을 극대화할 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
To that end, the government plans to foster over 200 medical scientists, 10,000 experts in clinical trials, and 2,000 experts in bioproduction every year. President Moon also highlighted the need to produce local vaccines to achieve vaccine sovereignty, saying that South Korea is expected to commercialize its first domestic vaccine by the first half of next year. He said the government will offer various support measures, including those for expenses related to clinical trials, in order to speed up the development process. The president also vowed to cooperate with other countries such as Germany and the UK for vaccine partnerships, as well as with the US. The South Korean health authorities say they expect that 70% of people in the country will have been fully vaccinated by the end of October or by early November. November is when high school seniors take the college entrance exam, and the Education Ministry also said today that they will take the test whether they've been vaccinated or not. Like last year, measures will be in place so that the test can be taken even by students who have the virus or are in isolation. And with the rise in new infections, the health authorities said today that critical cases and deaths are increasing too. Inoculations are picking up speed, though, and they said that'll help bring those numbers down. A growing proportion of virus cases in South Korea are occurring outside of the Seoul area, around 40% now. Today, in total, there were more than 1,700 cases. The authorities will announce an update to the distancing rules tomorrow. Kim Sung-min has this report.
Regions outside the Greater Seoul area saw 40% of South Korea's new COVID-19 cases on Thursday. Of the total of 1,725 newly added COVID-19 cases, 692 came from outside the capital area. Daegu reported 121 cases, Busan 111, and Gyeongsang-namdo Province 81. Cluster infections emerged at sports facilities, saunas, internet cafes, and hair shops, and many of those infected are those in their 20s and 30s who haven't been vaccinated. Some 75 infections stemmed from a church in Daegu. This comes as a recent study in South Korea shows that the chance of getting the virus is 4 times higher indoors than it is outdoors. And the authorities are taking this into account.
Whether it's restricting running hours or putting a cap on number of people gathering in a facility, or if extra measures are necessary, that decision should come after thorough discussion with the facilities and other local entities to strengthen effectiveness.
There were 40 more critically ill patients reported on Thursday, but authorities say this number is so high because data from the past 3 days has all been reported at the same time. Meanwhile, the government is set to announce any changes to the current distancing rules on Friday. In regards to this, a senior health official said on Thursday that no significant changes are expected, but rather small adjustments will be made to shore up loopholes that have been identified over the past month. Currently, level 4 restrictions are being enforced in the Greater Seoul area, while most areas outside the capital are under level 3. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
The more infectious Delta variant of COVID-19 has now been found in most countries in the world, 135 countries to be exact, according to the WHO. On Wednesday, the head of the WHO, Dr. Tedros, called for booster shots to be halted so poorer countries can get their first doses. The U.S. is seeing infections rise again, especially in Florida, which is reporting a record number of hospitalizations, now above 10,000. China is also fighting off the Delta variant, which has spread to more than half of its provinces. Indonesia has become the second country in Asia with a death toll of more than 100,000. Iran has reported a new record number of daily infections at almost 40,000. A new high in Japan, too, now hosting the Olympics. On Wednesday, more than 14,000 cases. In other news, South Korea has taken part in a series of multilateral meetings this week. On Wednesday, at the East Asia Summit Foreign Ministers meeting, Seoul's Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong met virtually with his counterparts from the ASEAN countries and discussed the Korean Peninsula peace process. This meeting was also joined by the U.S., Japan, and China. Minister Chung asked for their support in efforts to resume dialogue with North Korea. As for the issue of the South China Sea, where China and its neighbors have border disputes, Minister Chung emphasized the importance of international law and freedom of navigation. Also discussed at the meeting were cooperation against COVID-19, vaccine partnerships, as well as restoring democracy in Myanmar. President Moon Jae-in on Thursday nominated new heads of the Financial Services Commission and the National Human Rights Commission of Korea. He also replaced 6 vice ministerial level officials. Nominated to lead the Financial Services Commission is Ko Seung-bum, a former financial regulator and currently a member of the Bank of Korea's Monetary Policy Board. To head the Human Rights Commission is Song Do-hwan, a former Constitutional Court judge and currently a lawyer. Promoted to second Vice Minister of Trade is Park Gi-young, an experienced official in trade. And Korea will have a new trade minister. That will be Yeo Han-gu, who has been serving as the Blue House's secretary for its new southern and new northern policies, a key diplomatic agenda. And finally, the head of the Korea National Diplomatic Academy will be Hong Hyun-ik, who currently heads the Department of Security and Strategy Studies at the Sejong Institute. The Korea International Cooperation Agency, which provides assistance to developing countries, launched this year's Global Supporters Program in a virtual ceremony on Thursday using a metaverse platform. The program is called WeCo, an abbreviation for We Are KOICA. It's a group of 120 goodwill ambassadors, including 18 from other countries, who will promote international development cooperation online. They'll be promoting ODA projects through social media. This year, KOICA launched the event using the Korean metaverse platform Geppetto as a new way to communicate in the pandemic. At the Olympics, the South Korean baseball team will play the United States tonight, looking to defend their title starting at 7 p.m. It's a complicated system in Olympic baseball, so despite losing to Japan on Wednesday in their first semifinal game, they do have another chance. The final is on Saturday. If Korea win tonight, they'll go to the gold medal match, but if they lose, they'll be competing for bronze. Korea have already lost to the U.S. once in Tokyo, so it could be a tough game. South Korea is expected to start with pitcher Lee Ui-lee, a young player who had a successful game against the Dominican Republic in the knockout stage. And this is the first time baseball's been an Olympic sport since the Beijing Games in 2008. There are only 6 teams this time, though. Our Lee Kyung-eun explains why they decided to bring it back and how the system works.
Baseball has returned to the Olympics for the first time in 13 years. The last time we saw baseball was at the 2008 Beijing Games. In fact, the relationship between baseball and the IOC has been rocky for years. Baseball was played as a demonstration sport for years before being adopted as a medal sport in Barcelona in 1992. But after 2008, the sport was voted out by the IOC, citing not enough global interest. As a result, baseball was not featured at London 2012 or Rio 2016. How did it return? Of course, the IOC is in charge of deciding what sports are included. But the host city can also play a role in the decision-making. And this year, Japan proposed men's baseball and women's softball, hugely popular in Japan. And the country is largely favored to win gold as the #1 ranked side according to the World Baseball Softball Confederation. All these were good reasons for Japan to add baseball to the list, along with 4 newly introduced sports: skateboarding, surfing, sport climbing, and karate. Baseball's return has come with a set of complicated tournament rules under the double elimination system. This largely because only 6 teams compete. Of course, that includes the host country Japan, South Korea, the US, as well as Israel, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. Due to scheduling needs and venue limitations, there's a cap on athlete numbers, and the organizers decided to limit baseballs to 144 in total. Given that 24 athletes are required for entry, that makes only 6 teams, with Japan automatically qualifying as the host nation. Candidates fiercely competed just to get their tickets to Tokyo. And due to the complicated format, even the loser of Wednesday's game can still win gold. 이경은, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.